So they've chosen to put me first because I'm going to start the night out on a high and talk about death. I'm sorry, I know. Usually I contemplate my own death the morning after a big night out in Whelan's, but here we are. Okay, so hi, my name is Ellen and I am an archaeologist. And yes, and for all the proper scientists in the room, it is a good job, it is a good career, and it's kind of the perfect PhD for me because it's the only one in which you're actually encouraged to continually dig holes for yourself. So, I'm not really sure what the public think about archaeology. I think a lot of it is based around, these massive, really long-running franchises like Tomb Raider, Indiana Jones, Time Team. No, not a big fans of Time Team, that's fine. Okay, well, what I do is I look at the relationship between archaeology and anthropology from around the 1900s up until the present day. And because of that, a lot of what I look at is what has been written by dead white men. And that's just not the way archaeology is anymore, where there's been a massive increase in the number of women in it, and rightfully so. So, thank you. So, Hollywood, the bastion of gender equality that it is, has decided to take this on board. So, have you heard that we're going to get a female reboot of Indiana Jones? Yeah? Yeah, we are, because Ghostbusters went so well. We are. And so when they were thinking about who they would like to direct it, they thought, who better than the amazingly talented, intelligent, multi-Oscar award-winning director Steven Spielberg. And so they said to Steven, they were like, Steven, if we were going to do a female reboot of Indiana Jones, would you do it? And he said, you know what? Yeah, I'd do it. When Harrison Ford retires and hangs up his bullwhip, which incidentally, I just don't leave the house without. I'd do it, but, with one caveat, with one proviso. And there anything, Stephen, we'd do anything, whatever you want. And he goes, well, if we're going to do a female reboot of Indiana Jones, we'd have to call it Indiana Joan. And it's at that point when everyone realised that Steven Spielberg didn't know how surnames worked. Poor Stephen. Stephen needs better PR, he needs better publicity. But, he's not the only one. So the ancient civilization that I study, just not many people know about them. So give me a shout if you know who the Minoans are. Give me a shout if you know who the Minoans are and you're not my friends who I spent 4 years boring the hell out of. More realistic, yeah. So, the Minoans are the name of the people who inhabited the Greek island of Crete in the Bronze Age, so around, as far back as around 5,000 years ago. And they're called the Minoans because of King Minos, who was much, much, much later a literary mythical figure. So when the excavators kind of rediscovered the Minoans, they saw this link between early archaeological remains and much later mythological figures of King Minos. So, sir, do you know who King Minos is? Yeah, sure you do. He's the man whose wife shagged the bull, and then she gave birth to the Minotaur, and then they locked it in the labyrinth, and then Theseus came along, killed it, all hunky-dory, the end. Yes, yeah. Sure, you'd know him to see him, King Minos. But still, when people think of the Minoans, they still think of King Minos and the Minotaur. They still think of these, hairy, horny creatures running around labyrinthine corridors, lost in the dark, not a million miles away from Coppers on an All-Ireland weekend. No. People ask me, why Crete? Why do you work on Crete? Why do you work on a beautiful sunny island in the middle of the crystal blue Aegean Sea? If my funders are here, the answer is original research. And for everybody else, I'm just going to let that question hang in the air. The cold, freezing cold Irish air. So I work on Crete. Actually, I work on Crete because of something I call the 3 S's. But Crete kind of gets a really bad rap as well, do you know that film, the In-Betweeners movie? Do you know? It's like lads, like lads on tour. Like, that's set in Crete. And there's that amazing but like horrific show. I'm gonna have to this is a bit of a mouthful, but boozed up Brits abroad. I can't even say that without feeling hammered. That's set there too. But no, I know what you're thinking. My 3 S's are not son, sex, and suspicious parents, although I have all 3. No, it's son, skeletons, and something called secondary burial. Not funny, that's my PhD. So, what is secondary burial, you ask inquisitively? It is something that we just don't do. So this is a massive spoiler alert for anyone in the room. So everybody in this room, much like your favourite Game of Thrones characters, are all going to die. And when we do, statistically in Ireland, when we do, you'll be buried. And at that point, that'll be the end of the physical interaction with your human remains. Now, the ancient Cretans were a bit different. They were kind of like the most clingy ex-boyfriend of all time. They were like, just because you're dead doesn't mean it's over. No. So what they would do when the flesh had decomposed from their dead, they would go and interact with it on a secondary level. So as in the grouping of bones, the removal of them, sometimes the chopping, burning, grinding of bones. And what my PhD does is it looks at how our conceptions of death, of pollution, of bodily decomposition, gross, how that influences our interpretation of these archaeological remains. In other words, it's putting the fun back into funerals. But I think this is important. It's important to think about the public perceptions of archaeology and not just talk at people, really listen to them and have a conversation about material remains, the past and the present. Because when you do, it really pays off. I was having a really, really lovely conversation with this lady recently, and we were having a great conversation about Minoans for around 40 minutes. And she was asking me all these really, really interesting questions, which is lovely. It's refreshing when you spend most of your day in the library, working alone. And she was asking me, these Minoans, I love the Minoans, it's great. And she's like, were the Minoans, were they small? And I was like, kind of the average height from Minoan male would be about 5'5". So compared to that would kind of be the female average height now. So I suppose, compared to us, they were a bit small. Yeah, okay, they're small. It's great. Oh yeah, I love the Minoans. Really, really, really into them. Loved her. And then she asked me a kind of bit of a strange question. And she said, the Minoans, were they yellow? And that was the reason I had realised I had been talking about the Minoans and she had been talking about minions. So it just comes to show, when you do prehistory and you come up against Pixar, you're always going to lose. Thank you so much.